Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This show was recorded on April 3rd, 2023. I'm Asbed Bedrossian, together here with Hovik Manucharyan. Here are the major topics we'll touch on today. We'll start with a discussion of fresh Azeri advances into Armenian sovereign territory. We're not calling it invasion because the Armenian government has not even complained about it. Maybe they've tried to explain it, but that's about it. Then we'll talk about Pashinyan participating in Joe Biden's Democracy Summit last week. Third topic will be about the wisdom of Armenia's plans to ratify the Rome Statute in the middle of global geopolitical turmoil. Finally, we'll close with a discussion of Iran's foreign minister visiting Moscow, while the Azeri foreign minister visited Israel. To talk about these issues, we have with us Suren Sargsyan, who is the founder and president of the Armenian Center for American Studies, a research center based in Yerevan. Hello, Suren Sargsyan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Suren.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Suren, let's begin with the ever-present problems on our borders. In the past 2 weeks, Azerbaijan has made a number of moves on the line of contact with Artsakh and Armenia and occupied additional Armenian territories. In Artsakh, on March 25, one move aimed at controlling a dirt road that they allege was being used to supply Artsakh with weapons from Armenia. This, of course, is a blatant lie. Russia blamed Azerbaijan for breaking the ceasefire agreement of November 2020 as a result, while the US, quote, expressed concern, unquote, about this aggression as well. Still, so far, as we know, the Azerbaijani forces now have the dirt road under fire control. Azerbaijani social media even circulated video evidence of two strategic heights in the Shushi district directly overlooking the road. Now moving to Armenia, the other side of the Berdzor or Lachin corridor. On March 30, another move aimed at controlling certain heights around the village of Ter and Gornizor. This is basically where Armenia is building an alternative road to connect to the Lachin-Berdzor corridor because the previous one was handed over. And this is 8 months after they handed over Berdzor to Azerbaijan. So, they had 8 months to do this and they still haven't finished. It is a little hard to understand this incident because of all the, I would say, manipulative statements about it. But according to the Armenian National Security Service, Aliyev jumped the gun on April 1st because there was supposed to be the handover of the new road on April 1st. So Aliyev jumped the gun and reportedly advanced 200 plus meters into Armenian territory. Some say it's much more than 200 meters, by the way. And Azerbaijan is basically digging bunkers in 5 new positions on strategic heights overlooking Aravuz, Ter, Gornizor, and the entire region. And by the way, this is also depriving the use of the nearby field by local farmers who can no longer earn their keep by farming. Continuing, the strategic heights in Armenia, which Azerbaijan occupied without firing a single shot, have allowed the Azerbaijani troops to come extremely close to that road that is being built. That supposedly would have gone into service on April 1st. That is not complete yet. And essentially now that Azerbaijan basically has fire control over the territory, cartographer Ruben Galician says that the newly constructed road, in addition to being so close to Azeri positions, is now swerving into Azerbaijan, coming back into Armenia, and going into Azerbaijan again, at least once. So this could give Azerbaijan the pretense to disrupt the communications, even on this new road that was supposed to have been built from scratch 8 months ago, that is not yet complete. And even when it's complete, I guess the outlook for it seems not very certain. Suren, to begin with, what is your assessment of the current state of affairs on the line of contact between Armenians and Azerbaijan, both in the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh front lines? What do you make of these incidents and the Armenian responses to them?
Okay. Thank you for this long brief, actually, because you gave the background for the people who are not aware of what's happening here on the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. And again, we're not talking about Artsakh. We're talking about Armenian and Azeri border, and of course about the corridor that used to be between Armenia and Artsakh. This is a problem. So basically, the only thing I can say is that I have a perception that Armenia agreed on something, and it was not done publicly. It was done behind the scenes, agreed on something. And this is how the process is going. So we agreed to give something to Azerbaijan, and we are giving that something to Azerbaijan, and when we are trying not to give it to Azerbaijan, Azeris are going aggressive. So basically, my point is that there is a sort of secret agreement between Armenian government and Azerbaijani government, and this is the
another one of those verbal agreements.
Yeah, and this is another evidence that we have. So basically, it's all about the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenian governments.
Do you believe there are some who are downplaying this as just a tactical development, or they're maybe trying to manipulate? But do you believe that these changes that happened over the last week, are they of strategic significance, or are they tactical? How important are the new territories gained by Azerbaijan?
Of course, any meter, any centimeter is very important, because we're talking about our motherland. We're talking about the territory of Artsakh or Armenia. So every single meter is important. But at the same time, we are seeing that Armenia is just giving away territory which never belonged to Azerbaijan. And again, we're not talking about Artsakh. We're talking about sovereign territory of the Republic of Armenia, and we're talking about Azerbaijan. So basically, we have a situation here where Azerbaijan wants something, and we're just giving it away without fight, without a negotiation, without anything. We're just giving it away. So I think this is the biggest disaster that we have today. And of course, the main reason for that is the fault is Armenia's government's fault.
But is the government able to do this, constitutionally speaking?
Of course, because according to our constitution, the guarantor of our sovereignty and territorial integrity is the army of Armenia. But I don't know why, and we have a lot of questions why we don't have an army, and our army is not fighting. But the constitutional provision said that the territorial integrity of Armenia should be protected by armed forces of Armenia. And after 3 years since the war is over, I think Armenia's government did nothing to recreate army, to rebuild our capabilities, to buy some arms, some weapons, and to bring back what we had. So this is the main problem that we have today.
Suren, in Artsakh, there was a lot of noise made about the Russian peacekeepers. Do you believe that they are doing their job? And if so, was their job only to make note of what happened? Why didn't they prevent the Azerbaijani takeover of new territory in the first place?
Again, we're coming to our first question. Why not? Because first of all, we don't have any evidence that Armenia's government did not decide just to give it to Azerbaijan. So if Armenia is giving it to Azerbaijan, why should Russians protect Azerbaijanis from taking it? I mean, why do they prevent Azerbaijanis to take it? That's the logic. When our government is saying, "Oh, this is the problem of Russian peacekeepers, not our problem." What do you mean it's not our problem? It's the problem of our country. It's a territorial integrity of our land, of our country. Right. So it cannot be a problem of Russians, because Russians would say, "Okay, guys, if you don't want to keep it, I'm not going to keep it for you. I'm not going to fight for you. If you don't want to fight, I'm not going to do that for you." And this is very logical. It doesn't matter if Russians are there, I don't know, Americans or anyone else. We're talking about our land, and we're talking about a situation where when we are not fighting for our land, or we are not willing to fight for our land, our army is not willing to fight, our government is not willing to fight. That's the situation.
Last week, the head of the EU mission to Armenia said that if Armenia doesn't get attacked this spring, then the mission will have done its job. And Azerbaijan complained about this statement. Have we heard from the EU monitors on this latest act of invasion inside Armenia, at least? And what is your overall opinion of the EU mission in Armenia so far?
My point is the following. Are they here to protect us from Azerbaijan? No. Will they stop Azerbaijanis if they decide to attack? Again, no. Is it a mechanism that would just a little minimize the risk of Azerbaijanis to attack? Okay, just a little bit. But in general, I think we see both Turkey and Azerbaijan doing whatever they want to do. And we have to remember that there is a total support coming to Azerbaijan from Turkey, total support. And even diplomatic pressure that could be put on Azerbaijan is Turkey is taking that pressure away. They are, to tell like this, Turkey is saying, if you are getting a pressure from anywhere, if somebody's calling you, tell them to call me and I will take care of the situation. I think this is the Turkey-Azerbaijan relations and the position of Turkey in this conflict in general. So that is why you probably remember that Aliyev was saying that no calls or no resolutions can forbid us to do whatever we want to do. You probably remember that statement. And it was about that. I mean, they have total diplomatic support coming from Turkey. And not only diplomatic, of course, military too, but we have to realize that also diplomatic support is very important too.
Yeah. And lastly, on this topic, Suren, earlier we said that news about the Azerbaijani movements is very confusing because, frankly, it's very confusing to read the statements of the Armenian NSS and make any sense of it. For instance, the Armenian National Security Service said that there has been no change in the Armenian positions, without admitting that at the same time, Azerbaijan has moved forward significantly to occupy strategic heights.
Yes.
There were even, I think, some reports about Azerbaijan is now demanding that Armenians move back with or without maybe use of firearms. So how do you assess the Armenian strategic communication regarding this matter?
Communication with who?
To the Armenian public.
With public in general?
Yes.
I don't think there is a communication, first of all. I don't think they need any communication with the public, because if you remember when they were coming to power in Armenia, when they came to power in Armenia, they were saying that they cannot make any decision about Artsakh without asking the public about Artsakh. You remember probably that statement from the prime minister. But what we saw was, we all see what happened. We all see what happened and we all see what is happening. So basically, we have a situation where they don't even care what public think about it. And they are just giving away whatever they want to give away, not even fighting to keep whatever is important for Armenia strategically. The heights, the positions. So that's the situation we have.
Okay. So while the borders of Armenia are experiencing all sorts of instability and soldiers are dying on the line of contact almost every week now, Pashinyan was busy attending the US President Joe Biden's Democracy Summit 2023. Turkey and Azerbaijan were not invited to this summit, neither was Russia. The Kremlin's Peskov dismissed this summit as something that can hardly be regarded as a serious event. Suren, we know that you watched this event carefully. What struck you as important this year?
Well, first of all, this is the second international democracy summit organized by this administration, second online event. Last year was the same event, again online because of the COVID. This year, I didn't see any significant changes if we compare with the previous year. Again, so that Russia was not invited, Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, China, and all these countries were not invited. But according to the official statements, only the democratic countries were invited, plus countries that are committed to democracy and countries who are trying to build democracy and democratic society. So definitely Armenia is not a democratic country, but there's a commitment from Armenia to create a democratic society in Armenia or to develop it, whatever. Anyways, but we, at the same time, we see that Pakistan was invited. We see that Iraq was invited. So I don't know what kind of democracy we're talking about, but I see a lot of politics here. I see a lot of political background in everything and a lot of political processes. So, okay, it's good to be in that summit, but what is it giving to us? I don't know. That's the main question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. In fact, I was going to ask exactly that, but to ask another question for a second, Armenia declined to fully endorse the summit declaration and join other states at the summit in condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So was this a plus for Armenian diplomacy? Is this a win?
I don't think it was a plus. When Armenia was going to participate in the summit, there was a draft of the declaration that should be adopted. It's a non-binding document. It's not a formal international organization or formal alliance or anything else. It's just a declaration. And a lot of countries received the draft of the declaration, and one of them was Armenia, definitely. And they said, most probably, they don't want to join any anti-Russian, anti-Iranian, or anti-Chinese statements. So basically, that's it. And not only Armenia, a lot of countries decided not to sign or not to fully support, have some reservations Yeah,
So is
not only
Armenia
Armenia.
reaping any benefits from this summit? What was achieved by Pashinyan being at the summit?
I don't think we achieved anything, but Pashinyan can sort of sold this to Armenians in Armenia, like, you see, I'm invited as a democratic leader of this country because I'm committed to democracy. But in fact, in real life, I don't think that we can gain anything from here.
Yeah. In fact, if you read the U.S. Department of State report for 2022 on Armenia, a lot of the democracy indices have gone down over the past year.
Exactly. So this is another problem that Pashinyan will try to show to Armenian public that, okay, I'm still invited there. We have some problems. We have some bad grades, sort of, for not doing our homework as good as we should do, but still, we're in that league and we're fighting for democracy. I mean, it's a political tool for him. At the same time, try to imagine the Erdogan situation. It's very important to understand that in about a month, there will be an election in Turkey, and Erdogan is not invited to this summit, which means that the US is sort of trying to put a pressure on him, like, you're not a democratic leader, you're not a democratic state, and we're not inviting you. This is very important to understand that there's a lot of politics here.
Yeah, here, there, everywhere. And in fact, even in the next topic that we're probably going to talk about, I wanted to bring up the issue of Armenia and the Rome Statute. 2 weeks ago, as we all know, Armenia's constitutional court approved the legality of the parliament ratifying the Rome Statute, which is the treaty that establishes the International Criminal Court. Ratifying this statute means that the country would legally commit itself to uphold decisions issued by the ICC. And as we know it, 2 weeks ago, right around the same time, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. Obviously, this puts Armenia, in fact, all countries that have tried to steer clear of the global crisis between Russia and the West, or even pretended to stay neutral in their statements regarding the war in Ukraine, to pick sides. The Armenian Constitutional Court started considering this issue back in December 2022, when the Putin arrest mandate had not yet been issued. And then at the same time, the court's approval right after the Putin's arrest seemed to be like very, in terms of time, very suspicious. And it drew a sharp response from Russia. So what do you think about the timing of this approval by the court? After all these months, why would they issue an approval for the parliament to consider ratifying the Rome Statute at such a delicate moment? And do you see any disadvantages or advantages in the approval by the court?
Well, actually, first of all, we have to understand that no one is going to arrest Vladimir Putin when he comes to Armenia. Whatever happens, whatever you ratify, whatever you sign, whatever commitment you have, of course, that's not going to happen, first of all. Second, we know that there are some cases where International Court of Justice is having a decision, but no one is following the decision, like Azerbaijan is not following this decision. So who cares?
Not too far, yeah.
Of course, I mean, who cares that Azerbaijan is not doing that? Nobody cares. Okay, so this question of Putin is, of course, a very politicized and a very important political issue, but that's not going to happen. Even if we ratify, even if we go through all the legal procedures in our parliament. But the timing was stupid, of course, because, I mean, there's a crisis and a lot of people are nervous in Moscow, in Washington, everywhere. People are nervous. And you see these tensions everywhere. And then all of a sudden, Armenia is doing this. It's a problem. I mean, it's a failure because you are bringing yourself into the international conflict. You're not a party of that conflict, but with your stupid timing, you put yourself in the middle of this crisis, which is, I think, this is crazy.
I know there's a legal side to this aspect, but I don't know if you want to try to answer it. Also, the ICC, as you said yourself, is a political institution. So given the current global whirlwind shaping the new world order, is the Rome Statute at all beneficial for Armenia? What should be Armenia's sort of prudent, cold-hearted response to what's going on? Or maybe it's good for Armenia to adopt it. What do you think?
I think we need to do a big research to come to any conclusion about the topic that you are raising. Is it good or bad for Armenia? We need to calculate. We need to do a research. We need to calculate. We need to figure out. And there should be a big research done, which I didn't do. I mean, I don't have very specific answer to your question, but I hope that the decision makers in our country did that research and came to that conclusion.
And I guess the last question, over the past few days, Russia began hinting that Armenian dairy products do not meet Russian safety regulations, and then started banning these products. And just over the weekend, Armenia stated that it would not arrest Putin if he visited Armenia. And we assume all these events are related. What do you think? How do you think this is going to play out? Obviously, you said that Armenia would not arrest Putin. And frankly, as an Armenian, I don't care about Putin that much as about the state of Armenian diplomacy and the burden this topic is going to be for Armenian diplomats to fight back about and try to gain something out. So what do you think how this is going to play out? Do you think that Pashinyan's team will move forward with ratifying the Rome Statute?
You know, in general, if we talk about our diplomacy, our foreign policy in general, we're in a big disaster. We're in a big trouble because we don't have it. We don't have a foreign policy. We don't have a strategy. We don't have strategic goals, strategic approaches. I mean, we're like a fireman, as I'm always saying. Like, we see the fire, we're going to fight against that fire, but we're not doing anything to prevent the fire. So this is the state of our diplomacy right now. So in one word, the absence of diplomacy. This is what we can have, what we can name it, absence of diplomacy. And of course, it's bringing to the worst consequences for our statehood and for our future.
Let's turn our attention to some of the diplomacy swirling around Armenia, regionally speaking. This past week, Iran Minister Abdollahian was in Moscow, meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The stated goal of the two countries is to sign a long-term strategic agreement or deal. Reportedly, they discussed a wide range of topics, from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that is constantly roadblocked, it seems, for some reason or another, to Syria, and also to the conflicts in Armenia and Artsakh. They also talked about elevated defense cooperation and more. As we know, Iran has been supplying drones and things like that for the war in Ukraine to Russia. Incidentally, this meeting comes on the heels of an Iran-Saudi Arabia rapprochement brokered by China. I mentioned that because I'll have a question about that.
Exactly.
Can we put this visit in the context of the New World Order or multipolarity that is shaping up as the war in Ukraine evolves?
Of course. I think that now we're witnessing a process of creation of multipolar worlds, and China is having a leading role here. So we need to realize that China is a global superpower, and probably second global superpower, as some American experts are, political scientists are saying. China is playing a very important role in this Chinese initiative to bring Saudi Arabia and Iran into the negotiation table and give them, both of them, guarantees and sort of rapprochement, making them to go to this rapprochement is very important. And it's very important because Iran will have much more resources to concentrate, let's say, South Caucasus instead of concentrating against Saudi Arabia. So basically, we are witnessing a new process, very interesting process, and Iran is getting more active. Iran is getting more proactive, and actually Iran is playing an important role in the region to balance Turkey, of course, and sort of balance Turkey and Azerbaijan. So now I think we will see much more involvement of Iran in our regional processes. I think that the visit of Iran's foreign minister to Moscow is very important, especially if we take into consideration the fact that he's visiting to Moscow right after the Chinese president's visit to Moscow. And we know that just a couple of weeks ago, Iran, Russia, and China made military drills together, organized the drills together, which is a very important message to Washington, D.C. And to NATO countries. So I think we are witnessing the birth of the second, third centuries of the world order, which is Beijing, of course, Moscow, Washington, Beijing. And I think that currently we are seeing that Russia and China are trying sort of, and of course Iran are trying sort of make a resistance against the pressure coming from Washington, D.C. So the Russian sanctions and pressure coming from Washington, D.C. is sort of uniting Russia, China, and Iran, because they have the same, let's call it an enemy, whatever you want to call it, but still they have the same target. So they are united together, and mostly because the U.S. is putting a pressure, is putting a sanctions on all three countries: Russia, Iran, and China. Of course, they have to come together and they have to fight back, which is normal, which is logical. And so, yes, we're witnessing a new world order where China will definitely have a significant role.
Suren, where do you put Armenia in this new multipolar world?
Oh, this is a very good question. I don't know where to put Armenia because I think Armenia doesn't know where they want to be put. So it's about the calculations in our foreign policy. We need to understand what kind of foreign policy we want, what kind of foreign policy we have. But I think we have a lot of common values and common interests with all those players. We have common interests with Iran. We have common interests with Russia, with the US, with China, with everybody. So we need to calculate and to develop our foreign affairs with all our partners. I think this is the key element for our future.
You said we have common interests with Iran, Russia, the US, of course, a lot of other countries. Distinctly, I didn't hear you say Turkey. Are there common interests between Armenia and Turkey?
If we come to Turkey, we have to realize that, okay, we have a neighbor and we cannot have problems with our neighbors like forever. Of course, one day we need to solve it, but it's another question how to solve it and what is the price you have to pay for solving your problems with your neighbor, especially if we're talking about Turkey, because even if Turkey is our friend, let's pretend they're our friends, is it minimizing their threat against Armenia? Of course not, because they used to be friends with Syria, but they were the first to attack Syria. So basically, Turkey is a problematic neighbor, and we need to understand it. We have to have our red lines, and we have to be prepared for any possible developments and any possible scenarios.
Now, I know that you are a student of global geopolitics. Where would you put India, who has been rising, especially as a friendly country for Armenia in all this multipolar shifting?
India is a rising star, sort of in world politics, and it's an important country for Armenia. It's an important country for other global players too. And the U.S. is giving India an important role, very important role, to confront China, to balance China, and this is how they see the future of India. Balancing China, because as we know, according to national security strategy of the Biden administration, number one threat for the U.S. and number one challenge, or number one problem is definitely not Russia anymore, but it's China. So we need to understand that there will be tensions between China and India, and there will be tensions between Washington and China too, because as I already mentioned, India is seen as the main country which is able to confront China.
Suren, do you think the Iran-Saudi Arabia thawing, which we talked about a little earlier, is a net positive for Armenia?
Yes, of course, I do think, because as we know, Armenia does not have any formal diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia, and there were a lot of reasons for that. And first of all, because Iran used to see Saudi Arabia as one of the main enemies, and they didn't want to. Some Armenian political scientists believed that there will be some jealousy coming from Iran if we go and regulate our relations with Saudi Arabia. Of course, we remember that Saudi Arabia didn't want to have diplomatic relations with us because of their relations with Turkey and Azerbaijan. But now situation is different, and I think now this is a new opportunity for Armenia to establish diplomatic relations and have normal relations with Saudi Arabia, because why should we have one more enemy if we can sort of have good and normal relations with Saudi Arabia, especially if they are having a problem with Turkey now and they're ready to establish diplomatic relations with Armenia, if they don't have any problems with Iran anymore. So if Iran is having good relations with them, why shouldn't we do that? So I think this is a good timing to sort of, we technically have four enemies, right? I mean, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Saudi Arabia, who is not recognizing us, and Pakistan, who is not even recognizing Armenia as a state that exists. So basically, why not having just three instead of having four? I think this is good. This is good timing to do that.
Okay, so while Abdollahian was in Moscow, Azeri Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov was in Israel. He was there to inaugurate their new embassy. Among other statements, he thanked Israel for its support against Armenia in the 44-day war, and since then. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen said that the two countries should form, his words, united front against Iran. Now, Azerbaijan has not responded to Iranian calls to explain what this agreement really means. Suren, we've known that Israel's anti-Armenian stance in the Caucasus has two primary goals, money and Iran.
Yes.
So Azerbaijan is taking advantage of these goals and Israel's international prominence and clout to solve its problems with force and impunity, because it's flush with cash, oil, Western loans, and interest. Does this meeting break any new ground in the Israeli-Azeri relationship?
Well, first of all, we need to talk about Armenian and Israeli relations. I was always saying that we need to regulate. We need to have good relations with Israel too, but we need to be very open with our neighbor, with Iran. We need to tell Iran that, okay, we are going to cooperate with Israel because Israel is selling arms to our enemy. We have a community in Israel. We have a lot of very important Christian monuments in Israel, etc. So basically, we need to work with Israel. This is what I've been always saying. And I think because we didn't work properly with Israel, we lost Israel as at least balanced country between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Of course, Azerbaijan is much more important for Israel, but we could work in that regard, at least to minimize the arms sales contracts between them. At least we could work on it. I'm not saying we could be successful, but at least we could work on that. So basically, we need to work with everybody. We need to work with our allies, with our friends. If we are working with Turkey, why wouldn't we work with Israel?
Yeah,
this is another question that's
absolutely.
rising.
But what do you think was achieved by Bayramov's visit to Israel?
I think it was nothing serious at this moment, because I think this was just a message. This was a message to Iran. Nothing very concrete, nothing very specific, but it was a message to Iran. Like, Iran, be careful, because we can support Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan can support us. This was a very anti-Iranian visit and very anti-Iranian step done by Azerbaijan because of the tensions. I think this is mostly what we can can say about this visit.
Do you think Azerbaijan is making the Caucasus more dangerous for all countries in the region with its foreign politics in this area?
Of course, because they are very aggressive. They are very aggressive towards Armenia. They're very aggressive towards Iran. So the problem of this region is not Iran anymore. I think it's Azerbaijan, because a lot of countries are seeing Azerbaijan as a plot arm against Iran, and Azerbaijan seems to be very happy to be that kind of plot arm again against Iran. So they can be part of the coalition against Iran. And you know that Israel and Turkey supported Azerbaijan for 44-day war, not because of their beautiful eyes, as we're saying in Armenia, but because they need to get something from that, from Azerbaijan. And that something can be only anti-Iranian actions.
But I think we all realize that if Azerbaijan and Iran do go into a kinetic conflict in the Caucasus, Armenia cannot avoid being
a party. Of course, because the fight will take place on our territory. Of course, everything will start from Sunik. They will attack Sunik. Azerbaijan will attack Sunik. Then Iran will have to do something about it. And then Turkey will have to do something about it. Then Russia, then Israel definitely, then the United States. So it's going to take place in Nakhichevan. If we look on the map, we will see Nakhichevan, Sunik region, and some parts of Artsakh occupied by Azerbaijan.
Does it not make sense then and it seems that if there is a conflict, there's no question, or is there, whose side we're going to be on? So does it make sense for us to play this diplomacy card? We love the U.S., blah, blah, blah. Why not just go for a military relationship with Iran? Because that's eventually seems highly likely, or maybe not. But I don't know. Is our, if I may use that term, strategic balance between Iran and U.S. worth it in the long run? Or is that more of a liability?
We have to understand. We have to understand what is the threat coming from, and we have to understand what is the possible development. What's going to happen, and we have to understand that, or we have to cooperate with the countries that are problematic for the West, because alternative is the second Armenian genocide. I don't want to have second Armenian genocide, and nobody wants. I mean, we need to understand how to prevent second Armenian genocide. I mean, this should be the main topic for our government for the next government, hopefully not for this one, because this government is not able to do anything about anything. But I think preventing the second Armenian genocide should be our priority.
Yeah, and diplomacy basically.
Of course,
we need the diplomacy because it's everything to try and avoid any kind of a conflict.
Of course,
once a conflict starts, once
the
conflict starts, my view is that Armenia is the proverbial mouse in a room full of dancing elephants.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our topics here. And so it's time to ask each of you if there's something on your mind in this past week that you would like to talk about. Let me start with Hovik today. Hovik, what's on your mind?
Well, I would like to use my time for my rant today to talk about a courageous fellow that we all know, Garen Mkrtchyan, who was walking in the Cascade yesterday when he saw one of the most repulsive members of this regime, Alen Simonyan, and he couldn't but not call him by his real category, which is a traitor. But what is disturbing is the response he got, which is, according to Garen, Alen Simonyan ordered his bodyguards to restrain our friend Garen, and then he proceeded to spit in the face of our friend. I think that this is the quality of this regime. I mean, that says it all. But I think due to courageous actions of our patriotic friends like Garen Mkrtchyan, and like that lady, the classy lady who spilt a glass of wine on Alen Simonyan's face sometime last year, I think this sends a strong message to this regime that they cannot ignore the anger that is being built up by these people. True, these events are few and far between still, but I think the tide is turning. And if these people think that they will be able to hide behind parliamentary immunity in order to do whatever they please to enrich themselves, to sell our land to the enemy while doing that, then I think they have it coming to them, and they're going to be very much surprised. And lastly, I wanted to thank another true patriot, Suren Sargsyan's father, Armen Sargsyan, who apparently I learned about through Suren's recently released book, the launch of his new book. I was there, and it was great to see so many people at that launch. It's about
so many good people, I would say.
Yes, I started reading through it. Suren Sargsyan's father, Armen Sargsyan, who apparently did a lot for Armenia, and only a few of his adventures and his deeds are documented in the recent book by Suren. And Suren, I just wanted to also, as a member of the family, thank you for your father's service to the country. The segment in the book about the Monte Melkonyan operation is very interesting, and I've only begun reading the book though. So once I'm done reading the book, I would love to invite you back and we can talk about it as a separate topic. I wanted to see if you have anything to say about the reception of your book, and tell our listeners how they can obtain it.
Sure. I'll be happy to talk about it. I mean, you haven't finished it yet, and I mean, when you finish, we can definitely discuss it again. I'll be happy to talk about it. Yes, it's. I think there are a lot of interesting things in that book. A lot of interesting information about the foreign intelligence service of the first year of the Republic of Armenia and Soviet Armenia, and of course the. What is very interesting about this Monte Melkonyan operation is that in 1989, he calculated that the war in Karabakh is going to be a full-scale war and we cannot avoid it. And what do we have to do? We need to bring people who are real professional fighters, because we didn't have army at that time. We didn't have professional fighters at that time. So basically, it was a very professional calculation, and they decided to bring Monte Melkonyan, who was a problematic person for everybody, because he was everybody was trying to find and kill him. It was a very, very tough time for him. He was in a Paris jail, and then he was out from the jail, and he had nowhere to go because a lot of countries and a lot of people were trying to find him and to kill him, etc. So they decided to bring him here, and he was very supportive in Karabakh war. This operation was one of those operations. A lot of operations about Afghanistan a lot of information, a lot of interesting facts about his career and his role as an ambassador to 6 countries, as a military attaché to Washington, D.C. and to China. So a lot of interesting facts and a lot of interesting information. So I think when you read it, we can talk about it.
Yeah. Suren, can you tell us the title of your book and how people can find it?
It's everywhere in the bookstores in Yerevan. The title is in Armenian. It's an Armenian version only. For now, at least, it calls Mkrtchyan Aveli, more than a lifetime, sort of. If we translate into English, Mkrtchyan Aveli.
And the publisher is Newmag.
Yeah, the publisher is a Newmag. Yes, and you can order online. Yeah, you can order online with going to www.Newmag.am, and you can order online, and they're just sending it to wherever you are. So fast delivery and very cheap delivery. So this is one of the options.
Thank you for to that in our show notes.
Thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, thank you for mentioning about the book, Hovik, and thank you for coming, and thank you for having the book and starting to read it. I appreciate it.
We're going to leave it there for today. Thank you, Suren. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, guys. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's our show this week. We hope you found it informative. Now go find us on social media and follow us. We'll talk to you next week.